Nobody talks about this part of twin flame separation, but it can quietly cost you tens of thousands of dollars and sometimes even over $100,000 in lost time, missed opportunities, and emotional decision making. Awakening is intense. You're processing emotions, trauma, identity shifts, nervous system changes, and sometimes even energetic awakenings on top of heartbreak. And during this time, it is very, very easy to believe, I just need one more course and one more session and one more energetic shift, and then everything will just magically, miraculously align. I personally didn't actually spend years stuck. My awakening lasted a few years, but during that time, I made some financial decisions that I would have never ever made if my nervous system had been grounded. For me personally, my awakening phase lasted about 2 years, and I had actually been in the spiritual and self-development space for a long time before this happened. So in many ways, I felt very prepared. But during that time, I did make some financial decisions that I honestly don't think I would have ever made if my nervous system had been grounded. I had an apartment that was fully paid off, and at the time it felt very, very aligned to sell it. After selling it, I moved to Miami, and I told myself that the money from the sale was almost like a reward, like a gift for everything I had been through during my awakening. But at the same time, I had also convinced myself that there were still things I needed in order to finally get there. Whether that meant emotional peace, alignment, or moving forward on my path. So I invested around $4,000 in one course, and then another $2,500 in another one. I also hired a coach, and I want to be really clear, these things did help me in so many ways. But looking back, I can also see that I was constantly trying to regulate my emotional state through more healing, more processing, more energy work. At the time, I was also going through what I now understand as a Kundalini awakening on top of the emotional aspect of the twin flame journey. So every time I did deeper energetic work from these courses that I had bought, I would just end up feeling extremely tired, so triggered, and sometimes completely overwhelmed for days afterwards. And because I didn't know how to cope with the loneliness of being in a new country without a support system, I started telling myself things like, oh, maybe my soul doesn't want me to make friends right now. Maybe I'm just meant to focus inward. And then the ongoing healing kept going on. But in reality, I was actually just isolating myself, and sometimes even coping by sitting, drinking alone. I was also spending more than $10,000 every single month without really noticing it at first. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I didn't fully feel worthy of the money I had received from selling my apartment. So I was recklessly spending it very quickly while telling myself it was just an abundance mindset. I was living more and more in the future, in my mind, in this fantasy of how everything would shift without me needing to take grounded action in the present. And I told myself I had come to Miami to finally become a dancer and musician, as that was my biggest dream. And I did practice music and singing, but dance, which is actually my biggest joy, slowly got pushed to the back burner. And I didn't have much space in my apartment to dance, and the studios felt super far away, and I just kept justifying not going by telling myself, oh, I don't need a dance studio. These classes aren't really aligned. Oh, this isn't the right environment for me. Meanwhile, I was still spending money to travel even further to see my partner, which in hindsight was often a form of escaping my own routines and structure, even though I very so enjoyed the time that we spent together. And eventually, when my visa got rejected after my old one expired, I was just forced to come back to reality in a very abrupt way. I had built this internal narrative that things would just change financially, creatively, professionally, without me needing to build any type of structure or take consistent real-world steps. And that was a very, very, very difficult but also very necessary wake-up call for me. Looking back, I wasn't really being abundant. I was trying to escape. I thought that alignment meant I don't need to worry about structure, routine, money, or long-term planning, because everything will just unfold for me. Like, the universe will work it out for me. I don't need to do anything. But what actually happened was more like I stopped building my real life. And I remember before I moved, I was in such a good flow with my dancing, and I was taking my life pretty seriously on the creative level. And then I told myself that I needed to move in order to quantum jump into my dream life. But what happened during this time wasn't really that. And with all of this, there can be such a huge hidden cost. Twin flame separation can lead to impulsive relocation, career pauses, productivity loss, investments in repeated healing programs, avoidance of real-world routines, and loneliness masked as a soul path, and financial decisions can be made in emotional overwhelm. And none of these decisions truly feel irresponsible in the moment, maybe sometimes, but usually they feel super aligned. And sometimes they truly are, but that is just not always the case. And I'm not saying any of this to scare you. I'm just saying this because I want to raise awareness, and I feel like not many people talk about this. Healing is important, and coaching is helpful, and courses can be life-changing. But healing cannot replace structure, routines, boundaries, grounded decision-making, and building your actual life. Unless healing turns into structure, routines, boundaries, grounded decision-making, and building your actual life, then you're finally integrating the healing into the 3D world, the actual present moment. For me, the turning point was realizing that I was living more in the fantasy of my future than in the reality of my present. And that is when I slowly started grounding more, started building new routines, focused on real-world actions, and started reclaiming my energy from constant processing. So think in terms of root chakra, just being here in real life. If you feel like you've been healing for months or even years, but your real life hasn't actually moved forward, look, you're not broken, but you may be stuck in the fantasy loop. I created a workbook to help you stop the spirals, understand the longing for your person and the fantasy and the dream life, a workbook to help you ground back into your life again and start building again after separation and spiritual awakening. Because at some point I had to ask myself, was I really healing, or was I just becoming more comfortable escaping my life? Because my bank account knew before I did. My routines knew before I did. My nervous system knew before I did. Twin flame inspiration will keep taking from you until you learn how to stay. Stay with structure, stay with routine, stay with discomfort, and stay with real life. That is what this workbook is for, because closure doesn't come from a reunion. It comes from inner regulation. And the longer you stay in the loop, the more it costs you. And you will have to work on these things no matter how long you postpone them. You can find the workbook below. Thank you so much for listening to this talk, this episode. If this content resonates for you, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I am so happy to have you here on this journey, and I am truly wishing you all of the best. And I know that you can do this work. Return to yourself. You deserve it. And the faster you begin, the faster you'll return. As long as you're not in the fantasy anymore. Alright, thank you for listening. Bye.